Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And this is part number 4 where we have actually cleaned up the interior of the Mini. I'm going to show you what I've done. I repaired the dashboard, I put some extra dials up, but also I did some work on the rear seating. And overall I installed carpets. I'm not going to show you on how I all did this because this is just pretty straightforward stuff. So if you that wonder what all these decals and stickers are on this vehicle, well, if you look in racing history you will see that Gordon Spice and Steve have been rallying or racing these Minis, more specifically the Britex Cooper Mini, and this is exactly the same letters and decals that I have on it as the official old racing Mini. So you could say that this is kind of a replica. Of course, it doesn't have all the power that you would expect because this is only a 1000cc, but it is quite alright as it is now a stage 2 tuned engine. I've installed wheel arches and I did just bolted them down to the chassis. I did not cut out anything on the bodywork of the vehicle. I didn't want to do that really. We got 12-inch wheels and then spacers in between the wheel hub and the wheels themselves. The spacers themselves, I'm probably going to replace them because they're not the best type there are on the market. But okay, for now it will do. And several of the panels of the Mini in the front and in the back are welded together with a seam which is sticking out on the outside. And that's typically covered with a chrome trim that goes over it. Now I decided not to use a chrome trim but something else, and let me show you what that is. And it is a lot cheaper and I think a lot better. So typically you would have these steel rims or baguettes as we call them. Now this happens to be a front one, and then you need to clip it on there with clips, and this is steel. Now what I'm using is kind of a rubber thing with steel inside, steel clips inside. Now this happens to be a light gray one, but I use black ones. You find those typically on trim on edges of metal panels, and they just slide on nice and you can just knock them on. We've done a lot of work on the inside. I have installed carpets and soundproofing, and the carpets are the molded types, so the more expensive types. It's really worthwhile the money because I didn't like the bare metal inside. It was very noisy. The dashboard was laid out completely and we built a new center console. So let me give you a bit of a closer look on what we've done with the dashboard. And in the back, I took out the back seat. Despite the fact that I like a roaring sound on an exhaust, I don't like too much sound inside the cockpit. Especially not sound that is very appealing. So I installed underneath the carpets soundproofing material. And this you can get in most stores. It's about 1/2 inch thick. And it's felt on one side, and on the other side it's kind of rubber. So I glued this to the floor panels. I also did it on the bulkhead. And so throughout the whole vehicle, on the floor and upwards into the firewall or the bulkhead, I installed it, glued it in there before I placed the new carpets. Really worthwhile doing it. The dashboard was a lot of work. Initially it had these wooden panels on the sides, and this was just a hatch on this one side here that you could actually open up, and there was one on the other side as well. And I didn't like this wood. It just doesn't go together with the character of the car. It also had these ugly big vents on the side. So I did away with all that by bending a piece of aluminum, and this is the bare aluminum that I used for that. So you just bend it into shape, and then I bolted it down on the old wood structure. So I think overall this turned out quite nice. And then I got a nice sticker here from OZ Racing. I think this little bit of letterage is nice. The center console I kept as is. This was wood, but now I coated it with a carbon vinyl coating, as you can see. I kept the main dial in the middle, I have a temperature dial, and I have on the other side a oil pressure and a oil temperature dial. That was the missing dial over there. And then finally on the left hand side, I added an 8000 RPM meter together with my AFR. And in the middle we created a new console. And let me give you now a few close-ups so you can see exactly what we've done. I added an air-fuel ratio meter. For the moment it's installed, but I still need to fix the oxygen sensor. And I'll show you that in a separate video, because this is going to be a video all by itself. But at least it's now already physically, mechanically installed. The ref counter is a video type and it's fully digital, so you can adjust it for whatever amount of cylinders you have. And I think it's working pretty well on this vehicle. So let me start it so you can actually see it. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. This is a bit of a close-up of the OZ Racing and Bilstein commercial that I have actually on the right hand side on the face here. And I've built a central console with a main breaker switch, the starter, the fuel pump, and a few switches for the lights, besides the normal switches that you would find underneath the centralized dial. And I think this is looking quite alright. But now let me show you what I've done with the backside. And as you can see, guys, no more a rear seat, only an aluminum panel and a big fire extinguisher. And if you wonder why I did not put racing seats in, well then the answer is very simple. This car has to pass MOT and I can't fit racing seats in, because originally the seats are declined seats, so you can lift them up back and forth so the passengers get in and out in the back. So if you put racing seats in, you have to do exactly the same thing, and that doesn't work too well with racing seats. So there was a bit too many modifications, so I'm going to keep these seats as they are because they are quite nice. And just maybe after the MOT I might still swap them out. Who knows? Anyway guys, I still owe you a couple of videos. One of the videos that I still owe you is the AFR installation and the tuning and the logging. And the electronic ignition, that's another thing I need to show you, and all the other things that I've done on this engine. So, thank you for viewing, and I hope to see you again in one of my next videos where we're going to do a little more technical work again. This was just a wrap up. I just wanted to show you where I ended up with this vehicle after a couple of days of work.